There was a report of an explosion with some casualties and a deceased victim.
283, I've got body parts.
We had no idea if this was a targeted attack or if it was a terrorist attack. We have to put the pieces together to try and figure out what this is.
Is the victim the actual intended target? That is really crucial information. You've got to meticulously go through the layers because that might tell you who your offender is.
A very visual, public, theatrical way was used to kill this woman. And I think that tells us an awful lot about the person who did that.
Police have to act quickly. Are they going to strike again? Detectives will do everything in their powers to catch that killer at the crime scene.
In California, the FBI raced to the scene of a huge explosion.
The ambulance! Everybody get back! Everybody get back! 283 confirmed that it's explosion. They're fine.
The damage to this building was massive. The walls had come off the side of the building, a lot of glass and debris had been blown outside of the building and onto the street. The ceiling tiles were gone, there were wires hanging down from the ceiling, and so the damage itself was quite catastrophic.
Jesus.
Where there's been a huge explosion, it's actually really daunting and really quite scary, I would say, to attend an incident like this. Because where do you start?
283, I've got body parts.
3 women are seriously injured. 1 is presumed dead.
We needed to mobilize the entire squad and get more resources down there.
If it is a deliberate attack, is there a secondary device? Is it a terrorist attack? Are they looking at maybe other attacks in the area? Are they going to make an attack at a rendezvous point? So all these things will be going through your mind.
As emergency services search for further casualties, 2 victims are blue lighted to hospital, and specialist officers urgently evacuate the area.
Anytime there's a mass detonation, there's always a risk. The first responders were definitely concerned that there were more attacks coming.
Get back from the building, please!
Your concern goes to anyone who's at that scene.
I need you guys to back up, okay? Okay, that's you guys to back up.
We had tons of individuals from surrounding businesses. We had a daycare across the street. Children needed to walk by that area in order to evacuate.
The first priority was to, first of all, make sure everyone was safe. Priority number 2 was to find out what happened.
The epicenter of the blast is a beauty spa.
All they said is they're ready to check out. She said she turned around to open up office while she was
Okay, this might be a bomb.
It's confirmed the blast has claimed the life of Ildiko Krajnyak, the owner of the beauty spa.
She ran the business, she operated the business. That was a business that she grew for years and years and years.
Ildiko first trained as a beautician in Hungary over 30 years ago.
Everyone had the same descriptions for her as a person. She was very loving and kind. She was very lively. She was a good friend to her friends. She was always someone that would check in on her friends on a regular basis, her family and her friends. And for our surviving witnesses, they will never be the same.
Special Agent Ashley Miracle heads to the hospital to speak to the 2 injured women.
given the trauma of what had occurred, the details that those 2 surviving victims remembered were remarkable. They were receiving facials that day from Ildiko, who had just got back from being overseas in Europe. She had walked over behind her desk. One was standing approximately 4 feet away from Ildiko. A box was sitting on top of her desk on the corner. The box was about waist level. The victim told us that as Ildiko opened the box, the explosion occurred. She saw a bright white light that was brighter than anything she's ever seen, and was able to describe the sounds, the smells.
It's always difficult speaking with witnesses who will be traumatized for life. They saw a white smoke leave the building area after the device exploded. Those are all very important factors in determining the type of device this was. At that point, we knew that it was a package bombing. That changed our entire mindset. That told me that this was a deliberate act. And it's even more of a motivation to try and solve this type of crime, to get Ildiko justice.
Once evacuated, CSIs are safe to enter the crime scene.
Something in that box has caused the explosion. We now have important evidence that we need to find within that scene. You've got to meticulously take apart the area and go through the layers. Because obviously, sometimes in an explosion, there's lots of things that fall on top of where the explosion's happened. So actually, the device that's been detonated might actually be under a pile of rubble. So sometimes it's not immediately obvious where something's happened. At the same time, there's so much that's going on in the background. There's so much more going on with the detectives whilst the CSIs are examining the scene.
We knew Ildiko was out of town in Europe a week before the bombing occurred. So we did not know if the package was addressed to our victim or if it was placed there. We need to determine, was she the target? And so the victimology, so learning everything we can, their habits, their work, professional, personal history, financial history, all those things come into play.
That is really crucial information. It's almost like a starburst of information. They're looking for her mobile phone, where's her computer?
We were very interested in people who had access to her schedule. We have to keep an open mind and let the evidence drive us.
Is Ildiko the actually intended victim? Has she had an argument with somebody? Who are the customers at the shop? Who's her partner or who's her ex-partner? Is there anyone that's got a grudge against her?
In Aliso Viejo, California, popular businesswoman Ildiko Krajnyak has been killed by a parcel bomb, which has obliterated her beauty spa, Magia Cosmetica.
It's really important when you have the scene of an explosion that you don't just concentrate on that area itself, because an explosion scene creates a huge amount of energy, and therefore there may be debris and damage quite a long way from the actual site of the explosion. So we would look at the furthest building that's been damaged, or the furthest vehicle that's been damaged, or the furthest bit of debris that you can find where it's been flung out from the scene, and then go further than that, so go another 25 or 30 or 40 meters to ensure that everything is captured within that scene. But it's scattered over such a large area, it's a big job.
As CSIs search through the wreckage, detectives investigate whether anyone would have intended to target Ildiko.
Anytime that you have a homicide of this nature, it's devastating. This was devastating to her family and her friends. She was described as a wonderful human being who was cherished by her family and her friends alike.
It's always difficult to cope with the loss of life, especially in such a brutal way that this crime was.
For Ildiko and our surviving victims, getting them closure obtaining justice for them for this crime was something that we worked very hard for. All these different scenarios go through your mind as an investigator where you have to put the pieces together to try and figure out what this is.
Investigators appeal for help catching the bomber.
A few hours after the explosion occurred, there was a press release asking for anybody with information to contact the authorities. A man called into the Orange County Sheriff's tip line.
I saw an ABC News story. You know, there was like an explosion or something. And I said, no, that's our building. And that's our suite.
He said that he had some ownership into the business.
You know, I'm going like, well, what the hell is going on?
And I'm sorry, you said it's your suite? So you rent that suite?
Yeah, Ildiko, Krajnyak, and I are both on the lease.
The man is 59-year-old aspiring actor Stephen Beale.
We didn't know if this device was intended for him, actually. He could be targeted as well, or maybe he was the target. We sent investigators to his residence to keep eyes on it, to make sure that he was safe.
On arrival at his home, 30 miles from the crime scene, investigators have immediate concerns.
One of the things that the investigators that arrived at his house noticed was that he also had received some packages at his house. There were not only packages outside, but Mr. Beale had brought some packages inside the house. And so immediately they called back and notified the command post.
The team decided to contact Mr. Beale via phone and asked him to come outside to speak with them and not to touch any of the packages.
Steven,
Can they go inside and take a look at those packages?
please. The packages are on the left side of the front door.
So as I walk
right inside the door. Right as you open the door, the packages are to the left.
And so our bomb technicians went into the residence pursuant to consent to check those boxes.
He revealed that he was expecting these packages.
Those packages, you're expecting them today?
I'm expecting them, yeah.
Okay.
FBI bomb technicians declare them as safe.
They also asked if they could search the house for anything dangerous.
Anything's gonna hurt me, hurt my partner inside there?
No.
Detectives ask Stephen about his relationship with Ildiko.
Well, Ildiko and I were close, and not only that, but I know more about her than probably 95% of the people that you could talk to.
Stephen Beale said that Ildiko was his ex-wife.
Stephen Beale, a widow, and Ildiko, who was separated from her husband, first met online in 2016. They soon became embedded in each other's lives. Soon, the couple are spending almost all their time together. The couple went on luxurious holidays, visiting Portugal, Mexico, and Canada. Within a year, they co-signed a business lease for the beauty spa, Magia Cosmetica.
That business was primarily Ildiko's. That was a business that she operated prior to meeting Stephen Beale.
Stephen tells officers he can think of no reason why anyone would target Ildiko or the beauty spa.
Your whole deal is means, motive, and opportunity, and I don't know anybody that has the motive.
But investigators have concerns of Stephen's account.
We learned that they were never married. So that was definitely a red flag and concern. We couldn't understand why would you inflate that or lie about that.
Statistically, women more likely to get killed by a partner or former partner. So the police will be looking at that relationship.
As detectives delve deeper, specialists look for any leads to identify the bomber.
We said we cannot get tunnel vision. I was still worried that there was somebody out there We did not know if the package was addressed to our victim or if it was placed there, if it was mailed there. One of the things that we did immediately was contact your Amazons, the United States Postal Service, UPS, anyone who delivered packages to that commercial building.
We had other teams canvassing neighborhoods, doing searches for CCTV. There were video cameras on the building where Ildiko's spa was located. However, unfortunately, those cameras were not functional. They were not working. But we found a camera that was affixed to the front of the nursery school located across the street. It didn't capture much of the building, but it captured the street in front of the building where the explosion occurred.
As digital forensics analyzed the footage, CSIs meticulously searched through the evidence at the scene.
Scenes like this would be gridded off, and then every bit of evidence within one grid would be recovered. These are then put in a container or a plastic tub, and then that's evidence that needs to be meticulously searched through to see if there's any things that might be a part of a device. So you might be looking for bits of wire, you might be looking for watches or hands of a watch or batteries.
The team needs to determine which chemicals were used to create the explosion.
Once we know what chemicals might have been used, we might be able to match those to a second team, and therefore you might have evidence that can link your suspect to your initial crime scene. So CSIs would take soil samples from areas where some of the chemicals or some of the debris might have landed.
We took samples pretty much anywhere that when the explosion went out and up, we collected it and sent it back to the FBI lab for analysis.
As detectives wait up to 36 hours for the results, at Stephen Beale's home, they're confronted with an alarming discovery.
In plain view, they saw containers of chemicals. They were containers of oxidizers and fuels that are commonly used to make explosives.
One of our most senior bomb technicians said it's the most explosive chemicals he's seen in a residence in his entire career. At that point, we obtained a search warrant. We wanted to find out more information. I wanted to get those chemicals back to get analyzed as soon as possible.
Obviously, as an investigator, anytime you have an explosive event and you go to the residence of someone who knows the victim and there's chemicals present that can be used to make an explosion, obviously this piques your interest.
With questions to answer, Stephen Beale arrives at the sheriff's office.
The day after the bombing, Mr. Beale said he wanted to speak with the investigators about basically what happened.
Real quick before we start, I just want to know that you're here voluntarily. You're free to end the interview at any time. Okay? You're not under arrest.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you for that.
All right.
Mr. Beale told them the reason why he had all these explosive materials.
You know where that all comes from? Rocketry. Because I used to build rockets. I don't know what's in my garage. I don't know what chemicals they found. But there's stuff around it that was, relevant to that hobby.
Would someone with your type of experience be able to convert that into something on a bigger scale?
I saw the devastation, in the pictures and news reports. I have no idea how you would put something together that would cause something like that. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how you would go about doing that. That looks like a C4 sort of explosion or something. Because there's a lot of damage. Yeah. And unless the package that she was opening was very large, I can't imagine anything creating that sort of, that having that sort of impact.
Why would you assume it was a package that she opened?
Because it's in the news reports.
Did she open the package?
It said it was a package.
Detectives believe Ildiko was opening the mail that arrived while she'd been away overseas.
How do you know she was back in the U.S.? I have access to her schedule. I'm the business manager for her. Did you guys have share a calendar or something? Yes.
I wanted to obviously know what his whereabouts were. Was there any bad blood between him and Ildiko?
Detectives request Beale's cell site data and phone records, while forensics search his home and car.
When you're searching a vehicle, you need to think about, is there anything in that vehicle that would link it to your crime scene? Not only would the vehicle be fingerprinted in particular areas, swabbed for DNA, there would also be a search for any component parts of the device or any chemicals within that vehicle. You'd also swab it for any remnants of the chemicals, and any swabs that are taken are sent off to a forensic scientist for analysis.
As searches at Beale's home continue, detectives focus on the couple's relationship, looking for any reason he would want to harm her.
What we were able to see going through their text messages was that it appeared as though their relationship started to sour around February of 2018. So just a few months prior to the bombing. There was evidence on the digital devices of a potential breakup.
Beale realized that Ildiko was pulling away from him. There was constant texting and calling. He's just throwing all of this attention at her, just like he did in the beginning of the relationship. He is trying to claw back that relationship.
We also located audio recordings where Mr. Beale would profess his love for Ildiko.
My dear Ildiko, I love you for the way you make me feel when I'm with you. I love your eyes. I love your smile. And I love your voice. I love how I would do anything for you to make you happy. I love how I know you'll always be there when I need you to be. I love the way I can't imagine a day without you in my life.
He throws all of these romantic messages at her. It's very intense and it's going to be very obsessive.
If happiness were like the flowers of June, then I would take the best of them and bind them in your hair.
We can see the love bombing, which is a pattern of behavior designed to trap someone in a relationship. He's got all his identity invested in this relationship, which is why it's so very difficult when that relationship ends. But it's all sign of that real obsession, and that makes this person incredibly dangerous.
FBI are talking with Stephen Beale about the bomb attack on his ex-girlfriend, Ildiko Krajnyak. While CSIs search the crime scene and Beale's home, they've uncovered a wealth of obsessive messages and poems.
I love how when I dream of my life partner, the only person that I can see is you.
Ildiko's friends said that she was feeling trapped in her relationship with Beale. But as she began to feel more trapped and suffocated by him and the relationship, she realized that leaving was not going to be easy. He could see Ildiko pulling away from him. He was losing control, and he responded really badly. He's turning up when she doesn't really want him there. He basically started to stalk her. And the stalkers are obsessive people.
As the case against Beale grows, detectives still need a forensic link to connect him to the crime scene. At the bomb site, hidden within the layers of debris, CSIs have a breakthrough.
In the floorboard directly above the seat of the blast embedded in the wood with such force, the evidence response team found very small pieces of a yellow wire. The yellow insulation of the wire was separated and jagged and melted like it was exposed to extreme heat. That wire was within close, intimate contact of the device, which was possibly used to help power it. We have experts at the FBI lab that only specialize in metals, and they specialize in plastics. We were able to determine that this is not your everyday wiring. It is unique in the type of copper and insulation that it had. It had a very unique signature. However, wiring can be made all over the world, and it's extremely difficult to pinpoint it to this exact manufacturer.
Also embedded in the floorboards, they recover some metal fragments.
We later determined that they were battery cells of a 9-volt battery, which initial training and experience is that that battery was extremely close to the device when it went off. And the wrapping, called the jacket of the battery, was actually filleted open. It was a battery jacket of a CVS, which is a pharmacy store here in the United States. So we immediately collected all those and sent them back to the FBI lab.
This is the casing of a battery. I'm just going to swab the outside surface in the hope that you might get some DNA. For the purposes of this, we use a pointy swab because you can get into nooks and crannies. So the battery casing, of course, because it's been an explosion, you might find some chemical contaminants on this, and especially on this, you get some soot where the explosions happened. So I'd have a look at it under the magnifying glass just to see if I can see any markings on there that would identify make, model, any serial numbers on it.
I remember vividly, I was in the hallway outside of our command post, and I got a call from the explosive examiner. There's some unique numbers on each cell, and myself and the other investigators immediately became battery experts, and we were able to contact the vendor, we contacted the shipper, and we eventually found out where these batteries were made. And they're made in a factory. We knew at time what belt they were made on when they were shipped to the United States. We learned that the CVS battery was part of that initial pallet of approximately 13,000 batteries that arrived in Los Angeles just a few months before the bombing occurred.
An intelligence team worked to narrow down which of the 1,200 CVS stores in California the bomber could have brought it from.
The police can access transactions made, what direct debits might have been made, recent purchases. Detectives are trying to find out who's actually purchased that one battery. Can you match it up to where it's been bought and purchased? Because that might tell you who your offender is.
So yeah, it changed everything for us. To say it was a significant part of the investigation is, in my mind, an understatement. It was the investigation, in my opinion.
The FBI bring on extra resources to delve into Beale's records and see whether he could have brought the 9-volt battery. On his devices, the digital forensic team uncovers some damning files.
One of the things that we located was a log of his dates with Ildiko and the amount of time that was spent on each date. It appeared to be somewhat obsessive behavior. So for us, that was very telling in what he saw their relationship to be and how invested in this relationship he was.
When a controlling person's in a relationship, they will want that relationship to be as formal and committed as they can possibly get it.
They also find a draft of a new will, changing the sole beneficiary from his children to Ildiko.
This is making that relationship as close to a marriage, a formal marriage, as you can get, putting every single tick in every single box. That means that Ildiko now has responsibilities towards him, and he has rights over them, which is why it's so very difficult when that relationship ends. He's feeling a sense of injustice because how dare she leave me? So the way to resolve that is through maybe killing them.
With Stephen Beale the prime suspect for Ildiko's murder, detectives still need to find forensic evidence to link him to the crime scene. They keep him talking as they continue to interrogate his digital footprint.
When we first started dating, for months and months and months and months, she had her phone set up so that, you know, if I wanted to log into her phone, I could. Yeah. And I never pursued that other than to, go into her schedule. And then she just, for seemingly no reason, she changed her password and wouldn't tell me what the new password was. And this was part of the confrontation about that.
She tried to almost break it gently to him. No, we're not in a formal relationship. No, we are not exclusive. Break those ties of control. But of course, he recognized immediately what was happening. And as soon as they start to feel that, they start to become more dangerous.
An urgent call comes in from the forensic lab.
The chemicals found at Beale's home address match the same types of explosives to be found in the samples from the actual site of the explosion. Also, the same chemical traces were found in the vehicle. And that means that this vehicle could have been used to transport the incendiary device, or it could have been used to transport chemicals that have been used in the manufacturing of the device.
With Beale's former hobby in rocketry, the chemical match is not enough evidence to charge him.
In any homicide, you're looking for any person or persons that has, first of all, a motive to do something. Do they actually have the capability and the opportunity to do it, the means to do it?
In speaking with Mr. Beale during the interviews, was that he learned that Ildiko had begun dating other people.
How about this guy in Sacramento that you were mentioning? So what can you tell me about him? I'm pretty sure they met on a dating site. She's been up there a couple of times at least. Specifically to go meet him? Yeah. So how do you find that out? I confronted her with some changes in her behavior. The issue was, for me, why are you trying to hide it? She had come to me and said, I really think that I want to, open up our relationship a little bit. I don't want to be exclusive. I want to, date other men. I would have said, okay. We ultimately had that discussion. Okay, that's fine. We'll do that. But it was the hiding it that was a planned deceit.
Someone like Beale is going to be constantly looking at the relationship and seeing how strong their control is. That conversation was the proof that he was losing his control. When somebody controlling, like Beale, starts to see the situation as irreversible or irretrievable, this person's never coming back. And that's when the problems really started for Ildiko. We tend to get then the threat of, I'll kill myself if you leave. We can't be apart. But we know that he had no intentions whatsoever of ever leaving Ildiko, and he had no intentions of ever letting her leave him. And according to the research, the most common phrase used by these partners is, if I can't have you, no one can.
As an investigator, when you're hearing all these little fragments of information about a fight, information about feeling hurt and betrayed, information about disagreements, all of those things are pieces of the puzzle that can be put together to establish a motive for a crime.
Then, Beale's interview is interrupted.
The bomb technicians that were still searching Mr. Beale's house when the interview was going on called back to the command post and advised that there was a possible explosive device found in Mr. Beale's attic in a backpack. The bomb technicians tested the backpack. Is this an explosive device? Is the chemicals energetic? And they reported back that the preliminary tests were.
Do you know what was in your attic?
What attic?
Was there an attic space in your house?
Right above my bedroom, yeah.
Okay. Was there a backpack up there?
Don't know. So can I ask you a question, Stephen? How come when he asked you about the attic, you said, what attic? And you know there's an attic in your home. Well, yeah, I know there's an attic in my home, but there's also the space that's above the pool room. Yeah, you know what I'm getting at. Yeah. But, all right, so you're saying that you found stuff up in the attic?
Mm-hmm. Backpack that looked like it was recently placed up there, considering attics are fairly dusty places.
Mm-hmm.
Given what we knew at the time, the recommendation for public safety was to arrest Mr. Beale for having that device.
Beale is held in custody. But to charge him with murder, they still need forensic evidence to link him to the crime scene.
It's pertinent that police forces and police officers act quite quickly. All of a sudden, this investigation of an explosion is grown massive, and you're going to have a lot of detectives specifically working on the digital side of the investigation. Digital investigations form part of mobile phone downloads, text messages, photographs. We need to find enough evidence to charge them.
It is a huge undertaking. We had an entire team looking at his financial records as well.
One transaction stands out.
Just a few days before the bombing on May 8th, we located that Mr. Beale went to an ATM in Long Beach, California, not too far from his home. We got CCTV and the financial records of Mr. Beale getting cash out of that ATM. We had a detective from the Los Angeles Police Department who knew that area, and he knew that there was a CVS right across the street. We knew this battery found at the scene could not have been purchased before March 2018. The detectives went to CVS, made contact with the store manager. I remember when I received the phone call. When something significant in the world happens, you remember where you were at. This was one of them for me.
FBI investigating the murder of Ildiko Krajnyak believe they're on the verge of a forensic breakthrough.
We knew that we were looking for a purchase of a CVS 9-volt battery that we believed was used to power the device. That was the focus of our investigation at that point.
A local detective believes he's worked out which of the 1,200 CVS stores in California the battery was bought from.
The detectives went to see the store manager, showed a picture of Mr. Beale. And they were able to locate Mr. Beale purchasing one single 9-volt battery from that CVS. That moment that definitely changed everything. There was enough evidence to prove beyond reasonable doubt to charge him.
It may take a while, but we will find the evidence. And with such a massive scene of destruction, one tiny little battery is all we need to prove what's happened. And in this case, that's what proved the crime. We now have to prove to a court, beyond all reasonable doubt, that that offender did that crime.
After weeks of cross-referencing Beale's data, the digital team have plotted his movements. 3 days after Ildiko left for her trip overseas, Beale buys 3 boxes. which matched the size of the one housing the bomb. His cell site data then indicates he went to Ildiko's spa.
While reviewing that CCTV from a camera, it captured the street in front of the building where the explosion occurred. There was a vehicle that matched Stephen Beale's.
After buying the CVS battery, Beale's cell site data and CCTV show him going back to the spa.
We didn't have just one piece of evidence. We had little tiny pieces of a puzzle that we were able to put together to create a story that told us he was responsible for delivering this package bomb to Ildiko Spa.
Once Beale realized that Ildiko did not want to be in a relationship with him, he went out and bought all of the items that he needed to build an explosive device. We see him deciding almost immediately that the way he was going to resolve this was to kill Ildiko. And then we see the meticulous planning of how he was going to achieve that.
4 years after the bombing, Stephen Beale faces trial.
I do believe that no stone was unturned.
It's hard to comprehend such a small device could cause such damage. So we wanted to show, using the exact same box, the exact same chemicals that were found and used in the bombing, what that looks like. We wanted to recreate a similar type of explosion. Kind of gave the jury a sense of how destructive this actually really was. It's hard to speculate what people are thinking, but I can say that you could hear a pin drop in the courtroom.
A very visual, public, theatrical way was used to kill this woman. And I think that tells us an awful lot about the man who did that. He wants recognition. He wants to be seen. He probably feels like he's not given enough status by society, all of those kinds of things.
After just 2 hours, the jury finds Stephen Beale guilty of the murder of Ildiko Krajnyak. He's sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 30 years.
I don't think I'll ever forget it. There are so many unique things about this case, and one of them being the 2 victims who survived, the impact that this had on so many others. There are people that either witnessed this or knew somebody involved, and they get scared every time Amazon drops off a package at their house. I think the long-term effects and the damage is more significant than I think most people realize.
Ildiko is described as a really bubbly, friendly, outgoing, popular woman. The life and soul of the party, really. She was clever, she was skilled. She was working in an area where she had to have loads of social skills. You make relationships with people, and we might think that that's not the type of person who could be killed by a partner or former partner. But anyone, absolutely anyone, can become a victim.
The catastrophicness of the explosion and the devastation that occurred to Ildiko and our surviving victims, it's devastating. I've lived here my whole life, and this is the first experience I've ever had with a bombing in this area. It will never be the same.